All right, guys, looks like you're ready to move on and look at what lesson 16 has in store for you. So lesson 16 is all about return values and how you use return values with functions. And you'll be using return values a lot because when you're programming, you actually create functions a lot. So pretty easy, on the surface. You can have errors with this, but on the surface, basically, when we're looking at using a return value, we are taking in some input. Okay, so in this particular case with this function multiply, we're taking in some input of x and y, and then we are just multiplying those together and storing that in the variable product. And then we're going to return whatever the product is, whatever x times y is. That value then is taken outside of the function, and then we can do something with it. So in this case, we're just console logging it. So we're multiplying 5 and 3. So we take the product of that, which is 15, and then we just console log it. And then we have 10 and 12. So the product of that is 120. So we return 120 to the console. And then we multiply 276 times 23, and then the product of that, we return 6,348 to the console. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what return is about. It's taking a value that you generate from a function, and then you are going to return that value outside of the function itself so you can do something with it. So vocab, just one term, return value, and then the new code is we're just learning return. So our objectives for lesson 16 is you should be able to use the return function correctly in functions that you personally create, and know when to use them and how to use them correctly. So for our function that we have over here, we have the function mood, because I'm sure you guys are all in a mood of some sort. So I have two variables that I created. One, I need to get input from the user. Okay, so the input is I'm asking the user, what is your mood on a scale of 1 to 10? Then I'm creating a variable called output. Okay, so this variable output is going to change potentially throughout the program. It may update for whatever conditions are true. So the ultimate goal is to have a value in output that eventually will be returned outside of this function. Okay, so in a nutshell, what we have here is we have this if statement. So if the user inputs less than or equal to 5, then that means they're in a bad mood. So then the variable output is going to be assigned the variable of what the input was. So if the person put in a 3, that would fit into this condition. So then output would equal 3. Else, if the user inputted, say, 7 is greater than 5, so that means they're in a good mood. And then output then would be whatever the user said, the input. And in this case, if the user said that their mood was 7, then the input, which is 7, then becomes the value of the variable output. So then output would equal 7. Okay. So this function then is going to compute all that, but it has to be called. So how do you call this? So I'm console logging it. Your mood rating was, and here's my function call right here. Okay, so when I run the program, it first is going to ask the user, what is your mood? So the user said 8. Okay, so then I go back to my function up here. So if input is less than or equal to 5, then we're in a bad mood. And then the value of output would become whatever the input of the user is. And that's not the case. So then we go to else, and that would be if the user inputted a value that was greater than 5. So 8 is greater than 5, so that means they're in a good mood. And so then the value of output is the user input, which was equal to 8. Okay, so now output is 8. So we're going to return the output outside of the function. Okay, and then we run this. So then we have, what is your mood? 8. That's a good mood. And then I just said the mood rating was 8. Okay, so we took that value of 8 and then we returned that outside of the function to that console log statement. So here's your definition for return values. So return values, a value sent back by a function to the place in the code where the function was called from. Typically asking for a value such as the result of a computation, which is what we did, or a calculation, or any type of input that is put in. So it could be get text ID, it could be like I prompted the user for a particular input. So essentially what's happening here is that these return values, it's a way to move information outside of the function, out of the local scope of a function without using global variables, because hopefully remember that we established that using global variables that it can be dangerous, that values can change and whatnot. So we try to limit using global variables as much as possible. All right. So we're looking at taking some type of information that comes out of a function and bringing it outside the function to be used. Okay. So the way to code this is really easy. It's just return. Okay. The return function is used inside, it's always inside of the function, to return a value outside of the function. So let's look at another function that I created. So it's been rainy lately, so I decided to create a little function here that looks at rain average over a 7-day period. So my function is called rain average. I have 7 parameters. Okay, so these are the 7 parameters. My calculation is pretty simple. So I'm creating a variable, calculate. So we have day 1 plus day 2 plus day 3 and so on divided by the number of days, which is 7. And then what am I returning? I want to return this computation that comes out of this, or calculation. So I want to turn the result of adding all these and dividing it by 7. So I am then returning math.round calculate. So this right here is just going to round it off so I don't get like a long decimal number. So I just added a little fluff here to make it look a little bit nicer. So all amounts are rounded up to the next inch, a nice little squiggly line. But again, I have to call the function. So I'm console logging right here. So console log rainfall for the week of March 1st to March 7th. I am making up these numbers. So I'm calling the function right here and I'm adding in the numbers for the parameters. So this is day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, 6, and 7. So rain average, and then those numbers, and then concatenating all of that together. And then we would have something that would look like this. So rainfall week of 3/1 to 3/7 is 2 inches. So what was returned? What was returned was the 2 inches. So math.round calculate, it took all those days, it added it, divided by 7, and then it returned the value 2 and put it into this console log statement. And same thing with the rest of these. So I just changed the numbers up just so you can see rainfall for the week of the 8th through the 14th and the 15th through the 21st. Again, just making up numbers here. So that is another example of how you have a return function inside of a function, and then the value is being returned then outside of that function. So created inside and used outside, if that makes any sense. So I've had lots of coffee since I have been on. I don't even know what to call it. Are we on quarantine? Whatever we happen to be on quarantine, sheltering in place, whatever. I don't know. Anyways, coffee. Okay, so I have a function called coffee. I have a variable. I'm asking for input from the user, like what type of coffee do you want? And another variable prompting the user, do they want sugar? Do they want cream? Okay, and then I am creating this variable right here, which is going to be the calculation or the computation. And then this ultimately is what is going to be returned. All right, so I have to call coffee. So I have my console log. Here's my order. I want the type, sugar, cream. Here's my call to the function coffee. And this is just a new line. So I call coffee. So once this runs, this is the first thing that I see. What type of coffee? So the user says dark roast. Only way to go, by the way. Sugar? Absolutely not. Cream? Hell yes. So then this last statement here is going to be what is returned right here. All right. So what was returned for coffee is coffee type, dark roast, sugar, no, and cream, yes. So that data was returned by this return statement right here outside of the function. And then for order number 2, we've got same thing, calling coffee right here. So what type of coffee? Cappuccino. Sugar? No. Cream? No. And then once again, here is what was returned. So we have the coffee type. We have the coffee type, which is cappuccino, no sugar, and no cream. So some important stuff about using return. Kind of importantly, and sometimes I'm guilty of this as well, but when I ran through lesson 16 that I had to redo, I can't remember which bubble it was, but I had to redo one of them because they're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't do it that way. And I was like, why? And then I read through it and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So don't use return statements all over your program, okay? Try to only have one return statement at the very end. Okay, so instead of saying like if, like right here, instead of saying if this, return this, else if, return that, else return, don't do that. Okay, and I'm very guilty of doing that. So create like an output variable instead. Okay, and then you're just going to return that output. And when you do lesson 16, you'll see why that's important. You can have some strange logical errors if you do that. Okay, so here's some tips. When using return, do the following. Use parameters or prompt. The prompt is to get the user to say something, to get input. Declare a variable for output that will be returned at the end of the function. And again, try to have just one return statement. Update the value of the variable as necessary in the program. And then return the final output to the function call outside of the function. Okay, so let's look at our fruit function here. I was running out of ideas, so this one's kind of lame, sorry. So function fruit, we have apples and oranges. So here I created that output variable that I can store stuff in, and it can change over time because we know the variables can be reassigned different values. So there's my variable that eventually is going to be returned outside of the function. So there's my variable. So that would be declare variable. So that's number 2. Okay, so declare a variable for output that will be returned at the end of the function. And then I have another variable here for fruit count. So this is just apples plus oranges. If apples are less than oranges, then we're going to output there are oranges minus apples, more oranges than apples. Else if oranges are less than apples, the output is there are apples minus oranges, more apples than oranges. So this is if there are more oranges, this is if there are more apples, and then if they're equal, and then it'll do this. All right. So I have kind of interesting is I do have inside of the function, I do have this console log statement, okay, that there are a total of fruit count. So fruit count is just apples plus oranges. So there's a total of however many pieces of fruit. Okay, and then I'm going to return the output. So the output is going to be generated by whatever the calculation of this happens to be. So let's run it and see what actually happens. All right, so I call the program fruit, and then I say there are 32 apples and 71 oranges. So that means there are more, let's do it this way, that we have oranges, there's less apples. So apples are less than oranges. Okay. So if you look at the condition, the first condition that applies to this is going to be the first one. So if apples is less than oranges, we're going to say there are however many, first of all, there are however many apples and oranges, and then how many more oranges than apples will be this right here. Okay, so this is the output. There are a total of 103 apples, so 32 and 71 is 103 apples and oranges, sorry. And then it does the calculation where it's going to subtract apples or oranges from apples right here. So if you subtract 71 from 32, you're going to get 39. Is that right? 71, 32, 6, 1, 9, 39. Yay. All right, there's a few bubbles that were really confusing, not gonna lie. 6 through 8 were pretty challenging. Okay, and I think one of the reasons why they were confusing is because the directions I thought were not written that well. So I figured it all out, and then I did some pseudocode that I thought might be helpful. So when you get to bubble 6, if you're confused, you want to come back to the PowerPoint. You don't have to come back to this, but you can just come back to the actual PowerPoint and just move forward in the PowerPoint to this slide. So bubble 6, you're going to be debugging a short program that returns a number that is compared to a range of numbers and determines if the return number is lower than or higher than the range given. If the return number is higher than the highest number in the range, the highest number in the range is displayed. If the returned number is lower than the given range, the lowest number in the range is displayed, else the return number is displayed. So like you might get like a number, 10, and then they'll give you a range of like a low number, which is, we'll say 20, and then a high number, which we'll say is 30. Okay, so this is the range of numbers that they're giving you. And basically what you're supposed to code is you're looking at this number right here. So if this number is less than this number right here, then you display this number. If this number is greater than this number, then you display this number. If it's neither of those things, you display this number. Okay, so let me do that again. So you have a number they give you, 10, and then they give you a range, say 20 to 30. If this number is less than this number, you print this number. So this is what you would print, is the 20. If you had the number 45, it's not less than 20, but it is greater than 30. So if it's greater than 30, then you're going to print this number. Okay, if it's somewhere in the middle, okay, and it's not less than this or greater than this, then you print this. Okay, that took me forever to figure out what they were asking to do. So that's what they're asking to do. And use their instructions in terms of like the pattern of how to do a function with a return value. Okay, and I already went over that a few slides ago. So this down here is pseudocode for you to be able to complete Bubble 6. I hope it makes sense. If not, again, ask questions. Bubble 7 also I thought was written kind of strange. So this one you are creating a function called constrain, and I didn't understand what they were talking about in terms of constrain. Okay, and the code they gave you, it was kind of strange. So basically what they're saying here is you have the screen. You don't want the turtle to go off of the screen. So it's constrained by the X and Y values essentially of, you know, I don't even remember what they are. They tell you what they are, but for the Y values from 0 to, I think it's 450, and then from the X values to, is it 3? Oh, it says it right here. Derp. Okay, so right here. So you're constricted by these X and Y values. So this is X, and then this is Y. All right, so that's what the constrain part means, is you're going to be coding the thing, and you can see in the GIF over there that you're going to be moving the turtle with the keys, which is super awesome. And then you're constraining it to not go off of the screen. So again, I am giving you some pseudocode when I finally figured it out. So, and this is going to be for the function update turtle. Okay, and you're going to be calling constrain in that, and you can see that right here. Okay, so you're going to be using the constrain function in this idea of these parameters of input, low, and high inside of this update turtle function. So you're calling it in there. So xloc is your X location, yloc is your Y location. So you have your X location, your X minimum location, your X max location, your Y minimum location, or your Y location, then your Y minimum location, and then your Y max location. So these ones here, these are your input. This is low, and this is high. Okay, if we're looking at what the constraint parameters are. So give it a shot. And if you need help, let me know. All right, this one's the coolest one out of all of them. I think for some of you guys that want to do some like fun games for your create task, that this is awesome. Okay, now remember I think I told you guys this, I was told by the code.org people, oh, they don't learn how to do movement. Well, I don't know what they were talking about, because here you have movement. If you were to combine some of this stuff, this particular function that you're going to create with some of the color sleuth functions, like with updating the score and all that, you guys could have a pretty cool program, I think. So Bubble 8 is to kind of, for, I don't know, lack of a better word, wrap the turtle around, so it looks like you're giving this like illusion that it's doing this, okay, or this way. Okay, so you're wrapping the turtle, so when it goes off the screen, it pops up on the opposite side. So if the turtle goes off the right side of the screen, it appears on the left side of the screen, and that would, if it's going to the top of the screen, it'll be at the bottom of the screen, and so on. So apply the very, very, very same logic to wrap the function you did with the constrain function, but just with a little bit of a twist. Okay, so here's your pseudocode that I put together that hopefully will help you guys out. Okay, so if the input is lower than the low value, the output should be high. Okay, remember we're still using that input. I can't remember which one came first. Low, and high for the constrain, whatever it was, constrain function. So if the input is lower than the low value of, let me say that again, sorry. If input is lower than the low value, the output should be high. Else, if the input is higher than the high value, the output should be low. So it's a little counterintuitive. Else, input within range, then you just return the whatever is the input. All right. So when you guys code that one, you're gonna be like, "That's freaking awesome!" And you can do so many neat things with that. And I'm really excited about that one. I wish they would have shown this one earlier, but oh well, it is what it is. Okay, there you have it. So please complete lesson 16, bubbles 1 through 8. So this one's not very long. And again, if you ever have any questions on anything, please directly give me a question through Remind. It will be the fastest way. You can use the Google form, that daily check-in thing as well. I'm not checking those though until like the next day, and then I try to address those all at once. But if you have a personal problem, you need some help right away, use the Remind app, and it's been really successful so far. And that's it. So have some fun with creating some return values and some functions. And next week is spring break, so I don't really anticipate giving you guys any stuff. We only have one more lesson to go, which is a program, which I haven't even looked at yet. So I'll probably start working on that one maybe tomorrow, the next day. And I think working on that the week for the week back from spring break, if that makes any sense at this point in time. I don't know. Nothing makes sense anymore, really. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions, and I really appreciate you guys. The fact that I have, at least 3/4 of you guys continuing to work along is just it's heartening. It makes me feel appreciated. I appreciate you, and you guys are awesome. So until next time, adios.